in the way that food security affects these relationships with food, food relationship is the one thing that all humans have in common, aside from us all having some type of body. No matter what you do, what your goals are, you must eat. So we're all eating foods. And to ever suffer from food insecurity, it immediately disembodies you. You immediately it's like being unseated. You cannot listen to your body's hunger cues if you don't have food to eat. You have to learn to turn them off, and ignore them. And in that way, we start to see this diminishing of our relationship with ourselves and being able to honor our bodies, because they're all worthy to be honored. When it's nice to be able to have a tummy grumble and put something in it.
Welcome to Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black, where we discuss plant-based nutrition for the whole family. This podcast is all about supporting families in their efforts to give their children a solid foundation of healthy eating habits that will last a lifetime. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Black. I'm a board-certified pediatrician with over 20 years of experience. Over the course of my career, I've witnessed the rise of issues like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even fatty liver disease in kids as young as 10. I'm passionate about using evidence-based guidelines to teach my patients and their parents how to prevent chronic diseases for a lifetime of health. I hope you find this podcast to be informative and empowering. For more episodes, or if you would like more information about child nutrition and feeding, please visit www.eatgreenswithdrblack.com. Welcome to episode 12 of Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black. Today, I dive into the critical and complex issue of food insecurity. I'm thrilled to have two phenomenal guests who bring a wealth of knowledge and passion to the show. Joining me today to shed light on the many challenges faced by people experiencing food insecurity are Leslie Jordan Garcia, an expert in eating disorders and food justice, and Lisa Young, the executive director of the Hays County Food Bank here in Central Texas. Together, we navigate through the intricacies of food insecurity, distinguishing it from hunger and emphasizing its far-reaching consequences. We discuss its effects on children's physical and mental health and academic performance. My guests explore the critical role of systemic inequities in perpetuating food insecurity and the powerful impact that community support and interventions can have. So please, join me and my guests to learn about the important work being done at the Hays County Food Bank. I'm really excited to have two very special guests on my episode today, and we're going to be talking about food insecurity, an important topic for the community. And I would like you to first just give me a little background information. Please introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Leslie Jordan Garcia. I have an MPH, and I work closely with individuals with eating disorders and all phases of recovery, and food justice and food equity is a passion of mine.
Welcome, Leslie.
I'm Lisa Young, and I share that passion. My master's is actually in public affairs, and I'm a used to be lawyer, but right now I am the executive director of the Hays County Food Bank, where we're dealing with the Tetris every day of how much food is coming in and how much needs to go out. And it's been a real eye-opener for what's going on in our community.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about today, because I don't think many people really understand what a significant problem food insecurity is in our community. I wouldn't say it's really a hidden problem, but it is definitely something that I think a lot of people are unaware of. Even myself, up until recently, when I started doing more of a nutrition focus in my practice and thinking about ways to help my patients, I started to become more aware of the causes of poor nutrition. And one of the biggest causes is access to food. And so I was really interested in learning more about that. And so thank you again for joining me today to help us explore this important topic. Let's just start with a definition. Every podcast I have, my listeners know that that's the first thing I do. So what is food insecurity?
So one thing that we see conflated a lot is the concept of hunger and the concept of food insecurity. We've all felt hunger, no matter how rich you are. If you just haven't eaten, you feel hungry. That's not an indicator of food insecurity. It's not an indicator of anything other than being hungry. And that is the emotional and physiological reaction to not having eaten. It could just be that you really do not have access to food, or it could just be you're dieting, but you feel hungry. You've felt this, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone does. Food insecurity, you might not be hungry. You might have just eaten, but you don't really have a secure and stable source of food or know where your next groceries are coming from, perhaps. I have seen cases where people were classified as both obese and malnourished at the same time. So that can happen. You can never be hungry, but still be food insecure. Very frequently, though, as you might imagine, food insecurity and hunger can go hand in hand in that people who don't have enough groceries are also hungry. We see this a lot in our children. The food bank supports a number of schools. When they go to do testing, when they go to do analysis or any kind of thing for a child to find out what's going on with that child, the very first thing they usually find out is the child is hungry and cannot concentrate on this. So a lot of the counselors keep a little food pantry. I will say I'm sure there's a lot of them that are just paying for it themselves, but that to make sure they have granola bars in their desk. I know that that's true.
Absolutely.
But also, the food bank does help with that as well, to make sure that there's some shelf-stable things that aren't going to go bad, like cereal, like granola bars and things like that, that the teachers and counselors have access to help that situation along. Because very often they find out that the child's last meal was lunch at school the day before.
Right.
As a former teacher, I can attest to, we're working with hungry and food insecure kids.
And you got a drawer full of apples and granola bars.
Always.
And we see that on our end in the office because we have the families bringing their children in, asking about even diagnosis like ADHD or dyslexia. You know, my child is not performing well in school. They can't concentrate. Maybe the chronic stress of it is causing some emotional or behavioral outbursts. So absolutely the effects of food insecurity may include hunger, but they are also much more broad.
We do see an increase in both anemia and asthma with children who are food insecure. Also, developmental differences and poor academic performance. And to me, that's very similar to kind of misdiagnosing the problem at the school level. I'm using the term diagnosis with a doctor. That's probably not what I should be saying. But when you say, well, this child is performing poorly in school, this child may actually be reacting to any number of social influences on them from home, from the larger society. But when talking about food, they could just literally be hungry and stressed out about that.
And when I work with teen or adolescent individuals, I see a lot of binging, food hoarding tendencies a lot with kids when they are food insecure, truly. I'm a person who will always provide snacks. Hoarding those snacks for younger siblings. When I was a teacher, I taught at a Title I school. It wasn't uncommon for my worst behaviors to actually happen ahead of holidays and vacations, extended time away from school because of food insecurity at home. So they hated to miss school because that meant that they may or may not have something adequate to eat. So a lot of hoarding behaviors, a lot of binging behaviors actually go hand in hand. And one of the statistics that I see conflated, like you say, is actually the ties between food insecurity, and specifically binge eating disorder and bulimia.
Disordered eating.
Yes, disordered eating.
And that follows somebody well into adulthood.
Right.
That can be a lifelong consequence. Any of these things could, of course, be a lifelong consequence if there's no intervention for that.
If there's no,
but you do see people who, and it's one of the, I'd go so far as to say it's just a trope or a joke at this point, where people who say that if they had parents that made them clean their plate, they still clean their plate. That's one thing. This is really similar in that if you're spending a lot of time thinking about where the next food is coming from, and if you're the kid and your mother is insulating you from that, you're still feeling that stress.
Yeah.
One of our clients that was being interviewed for, we were making a fundraising video, and she agreed to participate, and she had 5 kids, including the prettiest baby I've ever seen. And she was talking about the fear that she as a mother had, that someone would later in the night ask for something to eat. And that was why she was so thrilled. It was actually why she agreed to participate, because she was so happy with the box of food that she got from the food bank, because it was going to save her from that. So that if she could put food on the table, that was one thing. But the fear, she couldn't sleep for fear that a kid would wake up in the night and say they were hungry and that she wouldn't have anything to give them. So she was so happy to get that. But that kind of stress is has an effect of the family's overall health. It has effect on the family's stability, of their ability to stay together and to nourish each other both spiritually and physically.
Right.
And we do see things that won't surprise any of the moms here. Parents skipping meals to make sure their kids get the meal.
Step number one.
That's step number one, right? Is that you wouldn't have breakfast if there was 1 egg and 1 potato. The kid is getting it, not you, right? So sometimes the parents are acting on not enough food. The other thing is that the very thing that was designed to help you, the interventions that the school is going to do to help your child with these academic deficiencies, that is stressful too. When you're trying to work and put food on the table and hold this family together, and then at the end of the day, you're getting Mrs. Garcia, could you take the day off of work and come meet with me? Mrs. Garcia, could I have a moment of your time? Can we talk about Andy's problems? All that. That is stressful too. So it is just a never-ending circle without that intervention to keep that family food secure.
And then let's add in the social shame on top of that, right?
When you're dealing with your child?
Well, not just with your child, just feeling inadequate as a provider for your family. So to go and get SNAP benefits or WIC benefits if you have young children, or go to a food pantry, is very stressful and can be shameful. And so families that could possibly benefit from that don't. They don't sign up. They don't, because of the shame and the stigma. And I'm just going to add in some other things that really layer on. If you are immigrants here, you may not want to do that, even if you qualify, because you're so ashamed of having your paperwork.
People are afraid about
deported. Yes, they're afraid. Immigration status adds to that stress. If you've ever dealt with Child Protective Services and having to go to a food, you're always worried about, are these people going to find out that I'm struggling to feed my children? And then that's a whole nother thing, and maybe a fear. And the idea that food insecurity is tied to poverty, and that those are choices. This is another source of shame, thinking that people who are struggling financially to make ends meet for whatever reason, that's their choice. They're choosing poverty, they're choosing insecurity. This is another spiral of shame and layer of stress that makes it really difficult to seek the right interventions and help to get yourself, if possible, out. I was just reading some statistics about now that the stipend with your tax returns is gone from
the
COVID.
Child tax credit.
Yes, and how the child tax credit, how it has adversely affected our families that are now at poverty level. What do you do?
Well, during the time of the stipend, that was the time in our living memory with the fewest children living in poverty.
Yeah.
At that time, that actually affected that. That sunsetted and there was additional money available for SNAP For anyone who doesn't know, that is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Used to be called food stamps.
Yeah.
A lot of people still have it in their mind that it's called food stamps, but it's called SNAP. It's part of the Farm Bill, and that is one of the biggest pieces of advocacy that we do is just call your congressman. We need a strong farm bill all the time because that's where we get the money for the
SNAP.
food from the food bank and for SNAP. And in March of 2023, it sunsetted. So everybody's benefits went down. We saw a doubling of the number of people seeking food assistance at our location alone. In 2022 to 2023, 49 million Americans sought food bank assistance. When we were applying for grants, for city grants and everything, everyone would be surprised every step of the way that we were serving so many more people than we did during COVID, because everyone really associated that with being the emergency. People were losing jobs and everything. But because of that addition to the individual money, not just the stipend, but SNAP, people were still able to afford to get their own groceries using SNAP plus their own funds. Because most of the people, about 40-60 to 50-50, depending on where you live, of those people that are working. And most of the people who have children in their families are working. So they were able to get more from the grocery store than they can now by a lot. Between food inflation in the grocery store, which you don't have to be a statistician to know that $100 worth of groceries is a lot less than it used to be. It's a bag. It's not going to take you long to unload. It used to be a trunk full, right?
Right.
So between those things, we have just seen such a spike, really doubling a number of people that are using our services.
And I really appreciate the fact that you're pointing out these are working people. These are not people who, for want to just laying around hoping that different options just fall into their lap and they're able to live their life. These are people that are working and
they're striving.
They're striving
through our line. They're still in their uniform from their job.
Yeah, and they're on their way back to their job after they get this and pick this up. And I think that just needs to be said, because one of the things that you started with is I think that, people don't understand the real problem that food insecurity poses in this area, right, in Central Texas. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon without some major rethinking of the way we program and some major interventions.
So the scope of the problem is pretty impressive. And you talked about national numbers. Can you tell me a little bit about the rates of food insecurity just here at home in Hays County, Texas?
Well, yes, I can.
That's all you, Lisa.
Buckle up, everybody. So overall in Texas, about 13.7% of our Texas residents are food insecure. When you look at food insecurity nationwide, the South is doing worse than the North, and the rural communities are doing worse than the cities. So here in Hays County, we're looking at 11.8% of food insecurity, and that is about a little over 27,000 people that are living in food insecurity, 1 in 5 children.
1 in 5. Wow.
Yes. So if everybody, the average amount that the government counts for us to have a meal is $3.48. So that's not lobster. That's me and you in a pot of beans, right? Sharing a pot of beans.
Beans and rice.
So if you counted all of our meals at being $3.48, and we bridged the gap, everybody got 3 meals a day. Our shortfall, what we're not getting, the people who aren't getting the 3 meals a day, is almost $17 million per year.
Per year.
Right. So when I tell you how much we're doing, about 135,000 pounds of food a month at the food bank, which is 90,000 meals. That sounds like a lot, and it feels like a lot until you realize that we're $17 million short on that.
Wow.
So that's a lot. But the numbers get a little different once we start breaking down into demographic groups.
I'm sure.
So with 11.8% food insecurity, children are at 12.5% insecurity. And as I said before, those households that have children in them, very much that more mouths to feed takes you into more food insecurity. That's not hard to fathom. But those about 40% of those people, those families with children, are above the poverty line and don't qualify for some of our other benefits.
So even people living above the poverty line can
Absolutely.
be food insecure. I think that's an important
Yes, and we allow for that. So our line for eligibility is higher. Like we will take you at a higher income than some of the other benefits that you could get.
Like SNAP or
SNAP and
TANF,
Medicaid and
Medicaid,
TANF, right?
Yes.
And so seniors in our area are at 8.5%. And we definitely see that. I have walked down the line with some of our senior citizens, and I will never forget walking down. This one woman was delighted to see the food. She had never come to the food bank. She was delighted to see what was there. I don't know what she'd pictured, but to see fresh produce and everything. And she, as we went down the line, and she's just exclaiming in English and Spanish and just so happy and holding my arm because it was just so thrilling to get this trunk full of food. But she started eating it. She picked up a carrot and started eating it. And I was like, that is when you were hungry. She could not wait to actually get home and cook any of this food. She just had to have something to eat right then and there. We have had people faint in our line from low blood sugar. So 24%, this is a nationwide number, 24% of active military are seeking food services. They are food insecure.
That blows my mind.
It does, but they have well, first of all, they're not highly paid.
Not highly paid. As a former enlisted
She's a
person,
veteran.
Oh my goodness. As a former enlisted person, the pay for a full-time person, if you just like you're fresh out of high school and enlist now, not even when I enlisted, but now is $1,100 a month. So if you're a young GI and you get married and you have a kid, you're well below the poverty line, even if you're working.
This is a learn something new every day kind of job, which is the kind of the way I like it. But it's just a constantly evolving thing. But I'm hearing so much about transportation, especially in our rural areas. Mm-hmm. That is a huge problem, and one that is almost always told to me as to why people can't get to the food bank, why people can't get to the grocery store, why people can't get to jobs. That is a problem that has to be addressed. The other thing that'll interest you, Angela, very, very commonly choosing between medication and food with what money you have.
Absolutely.
We had a gentleman tell us recently that some weeks he was hungry because he had got the medication, and some weeks he was sick because he got the food.
Because he got the food.
And that those were the choices. That always bogs my mind a little bit. Now, what about race and food inequity? It's definitely there, and I do have the Hays County numbers for you. Now, I want to say this with a big caveat, because anyone can be experiencing food insecurity or hunger. So in Hays County, among people who are white, about 9% of that group is food insecure. And people who identify as Hispanic, it goes up to 16%. And people who identify as Black or African American, it goes up to 22%. And then in our college students, it's about 1 in 7.
I know another risk factor is disability. And you were mentioning choosing between medication, your access to transportation. People with disabilities, all of those things come into effect. Their ability to work and have gainful employment, their ability to access transportation. So I know the rates for people with disabilities are higher. One of the issues that's come up with some of my patients with significant medical issues, like medically fragile children with complex disorders, is the access to help caring for the child. So the parent can't work because this is not a child that can go to daycare. The family members may not be able to care for them if they have complex medical issues. Obtaining nursing, even if you qualify for it, obtaining respite or private duty nursing care can be very challenging. There's a big shortage of care in that realm, and that's affected my family directly because my daughter qualifies for private duty nursing, and we've gone over a year at a time with no nursing care. Fortunately, we're in a position to be able to afford other options, but most people can't. If I didn't have an actual physician's salary, I would have had to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom to take care of my daughter. And then that lowers the family income and raises their risk of food insecurity. So it's a complex problem that has a lot of different causes. And what that, of course, means is that the solution is going to also be very complex. It has to address all of those issues, not only our healthcare system, but our community infrastructure, public transportation, ease of access. It's a very complicated issue. So thank you for sharing those impressive and a little overwhelming statistics.
They are, like you say, that is overwhelming numbers. And it is also a little overwhelming to wrap your mind around that we're addressing it through nonprofits. Nobody mandated people 40 years ago to form the Hays County Food Bank. They just did it out of seeing the need and the goodness of their heart, but they weren't government actors of any kind. This is a private and we get support from the government, of course, but they're not organizing this for us.
So speaking of the nonprofit Hays County Food Bank, tell me a little bit more about the work that you do and some of the other programs. What exactly does the Hays County Food Bank do besides just handing out food at your location?
So many things, Angela. We're very, very fortunate to have the support of the Hays County community. 83% of our financing is from private donors. We also do receive support from the city of San Marcos and from Hays County, from churches and from government agencies like the USDA. We partner with Central Texas Food Bank, and we order the majority of our food through them. We do have, people do their own food drives, and we do purchase food with some of the donor money. But a lot of food is coming in every day. It's fun to see it. Some of it is, oh, wow, this is a whole lot of bananas that have to be given away today because they are on their last legs. Things like that happen. And we have an amazing staff and an army of volunteers that deal with that. So we do, as you said, we have food distribution at our own office in San Marcos. We also do mobile ones where we go out in our vans. Everybody, I think, knows the green and white van. We go out in our vans to Buda, Kyle, Wimberley, and Euland. And people come through the line and get their food that way. But then the other, probably half of the food that's going out is going out through what we call our last mile sites. So the last mile sites are distributions that are being put on by Hays County Food Bank at a different location, trying to get into the communities, that last mile problem that we have in every, in transportation and everything. So trying to get closer to you. Maybe it's at your child's school or at your church, the senior center. Bobcat Bounty is a huge one for the university students. Also the Salvation Army at Hays County Women's Center. All of these places, they come, they have a schedule, they know what day they're coming to pick up food from us for the number of people that are going to be served at that location. And through volunteers that are all trained through Hays County Food Bank, they distribute the food on their given days. So like Bobcat Bounty is on a Monday, college students come and pick up food there so that we can get to more people. One big thing, we've talked about transportation for different people, whether they're elderly, disabled, just flat out don't have a car. All of those things are going on, right? The biggest way that we deal with that is through what we call a proxy. And I urge everyone to just, if you are applying for our services, and please do if you need them, we every day try to find out ways to take away any barriers for people getting there. We don't care about your immigration status. We have an application because we're required to by law, but it's going to be self-report. You do not have to bring in your file folder full of receipts or anything like that. You just come in and fill out an application and you'll get food that same day. It is not fill out an application and we'll call you in 2 weeks. It is you say you're hungry, fill out this application, food's going in your car or your wagon or whatever you have today. And then after that, you'll be worked into
The
the
rotation.
schedule. You'll have the schedule of when and how often you can pick up food. And if there turns out to be, very rarely, if there turns out to be some sort of question about your application, you'll be called. We are trying our hardest to make sure that the food is in kitchens. We are not trying to hoard it at our location. But we do have, when you do your application, we allow for you to put a proxy, and that is someone else who could pick up the food if you don't go personally. Your pastor, your church, your mother, your sister-in-law, your son, it can be anyone that you choose. The person who you choose will have to show their ID when they pick up your food. So if I say, Leslie can pick up my food, she's going to have to go, hey, I'm Leslie, here's my ID. And they'll go, Leslie, here you go. And they'll give Leslie my food and she'll bring it to my house. We do have some people we're delivering to, but we don't have the capacity to deliver to everyone. So the people that we're delivering to, they have to be both over 65 and disabled, or temporarily placed in a motel through a city program emerging from homelessness. So we do deliver to those groups of people, but even within those, we don't have full capacity to deliver to everyone. So naming a proxy is the best way to get around that. You know, you like Leslie, if she were picking up for me, she could pick up her food and my food at the same time. So this would be not a problem. The other thing that we do is called a tough bag. It's temporarily unhoused food is what tough stands for. And that is for people who are truly living outdoors. They are not in the motels. They need a different stream of food. The people at the motels and the people at home delivery are also getting a slightly adjusted amount of food. In a motel, you might only have a microwave. So me giving you a whole raw turkey does nothing for you, right? Mm-hmm. We want to be very produce forward, but we're not restrictive on people's eating in any way. So we do try to give you some produce, some breads and sweets, but also things that can be easily prepared in the microwave if you're in a motel. And then if you are truly outdoors, ready to eat, easy open things that you can have that are not a burden that you will be able to just eat. When people do food drives, we love for them to get food drives for that kind of food because that is the most expensive for me to procure, is that ready to eat easy open. And by easy open, I mean pop tab instead of a can opener, a peel off tab. Those are great. The peanut butter and crackers, all that stuff really helps out with that. We also do nutrition education. We have classes around that you could see on our website, but also at the locations that they're usually on the calendar, like the Buda Public Library does a great family one. I've been visited a few times and the kids are just having a ball over there. And also they do at the senior center and a couple of other different locations, and they're keyed toward those populations. We're hoping to expand our facility. We're in the process of buying a new building, and that will really allow us to expand that educational program of it a lot. It'll also allow us to move to a client choice model. It'll be a hybrid. We'll never abandon our vans. We still will go out. In fact, maybe even more so once we have a bigger warehouse to work from. So I don't want anyone to think we're going to stop going around. That's not going to happen. But we would be able to add a client choice one where you could come in an appointment slot, so we can't have everyone coming at once, and shop the shelves yourself and pick what you think you would enjoy, what you like to cook. Kids can come with you. It's going to be like a little grocery store. And this will reduce food waste because people will be taking things home that they think they're going to cook. And I think just the dignity of it is just such a raise for our community, because people will, like I said, come in, walk around the little store, pick the stuff that be excited about what you're going to cook. We'll have some recipes out for some things that we get frequently. We are very produce forward. We try to make sure that the majority of your box, if we can, but it depends on what we've got, is produce. But we don't like to promote any restrictive eating, like everybody must be vegetarian or no sugar whatsoever. We don't want to add to any shame around eating or stress around eating. I love it when we get in enough produce to make sure that everybody is just loaded up with it. But we don't want to sit there and tell people, you're doing it wrong, there's a right way, you don't know it.
And my message is always, to the extent that you're able, consider adding more of these foods in to reap the health benefits. We want it to be empowering and not
Right.
shaming. And Leslie, you can talk more about this. We mentioned earlier about how food insecurity can actually promote an unhealthy relationship with eating. So, Leslie, please tell us a little bit more about
how food insecurity, really sets us up to have disordered or not the best relationship with food. There's so much messaging in our society about food. Thousands of decisions we're making on daily just about food. To eat this, to buy this, don't eat fast food. What is fast food? And now we have these buzzwords like ultra processed and different things like that. So there's a lot of messaging around food. When I work with my clients or give talks and all the first thing I say is fed is best.
I was going to say that.
Yes, we have to start there, because I just think that needs to be said sometimes, because I get clients, I talk to all types of people about food, and you hear your cultural foods have been completely demonized, and you don't want to enjoy the foods that maybe would nourish your spirit and maybe not nutrition wise sometimes. But if we really look at cultural diets are sound diets. The Mediterranean diet, for example, is one cultural diet. The African heritage diet looks a lot like the Mediterranean diet. And these are what I call not plant. When I don't use the word plant-based, I use the word plant-forward. These are plant-heavy diets, but they also eat from all the food groups. Like these are the
predominant.
Yes, predominantly plants. Produce forests. Produce is a plant. Your fruits and vegetables, your sea vegetables, your edible flowers. Whatever you can get your teeth into is going to be better than not eating. That's a fact. So we have the Mediterranean diet is very popular there. Like I said, the African heritage diet, not to be confused with soul food. Soul food is an amalgamation. And it wasn't the African heritage diet when enslaved Africans were here. That wasn't what they were eating in Africa or what they eat in Africa now. So I want to be clear about that's different. Latin American heritage diet, also very plant predominant. Native and indigenous heritage diets are plant predominant. So we have lots of ways that cultures and peoples for millennia have been getting all the nutrients that they need to keep reproducing and reproducing healthily, because they're still here. So these diets do work. So I am a big proponent of enjoying your cultural foods, but in the way that food security affects these relationships with food. Food relationship is the one thing that all humans have in common, aside from us all having some type of body. No matter what you do, what your goals are, you must eat. So we're all eating foods, and to ever suffer from food insecurity, it immediately disembodies you. You immediately it's like being unseated. You cannot listen to your body's hunger cues if you don't have food to eat. You have to learn to turn them off, and ignore them. And in that way, we start to see this diminishing of our relationship with ourselves and being able to honor our bodies, because they're all worthy to be honored. When it's nice to be able to have a tummy grumble and put something in it, or to feel that brain fog and know that you have that last little carrot cake cupcake to eat, that can get you through. It's nice. Food is more than just fuel, even though the fuel is very important. Food also creates memories. It bonds us. We share experiences. We get to know other cultures and relate and connect. So food does a lot for us. It's emotional. It's also sometimes just soothing it. And that's okay sometimes to use it that way. We need a toolkit of a lot of tools, but when that food relationship becomes the only coping skill or coping mechanism that you have for stress, for sadness, for grief, and it's also the only thing you have
for celebration.
I was going to say, it's also the only thing you have for joy, for celebration, for connection, for family, then as a tool, it would be overused. So that is why that relationship, being able to have an even keel, an even experience, so we don't fixate, so we don't obsess, so we don't have these things taking up all of our mental space. Because when you swing from one extreme to the other, now you're in disordered eating or eating disorders, which are a complex, multifaceted mental health crisis. Eating disorders are the second deadliest mental health disorder. So it's very preventable, I think, in a lot of ways, because in my purview, I treat eating disorders as a social justice disorder. So some of the things that Lisa talked about in her statistics when it comes like to breaking down race or ability, or like you mentioned, disability, these are social justice issues. These are issues that stem from systemic inequities and disparities and could be dismantled and overcame. Like if we just had a truthful relationship with what has happened, why it has happened, and what can we do differently? Why are some people more disadvantaged than others? And so that's how I approach working with people with food relationship struggles, because they're tough. And I have been on that end. I was battling binge eating disorder for years. So and until I got therapy and, got to the other side of that. So I know what that looks like and how it affects your everyday living. Like your every thought is about food, and it just becomes so all encompassing where you aren't making the decisions or the choices, even if you have access to them. So it's very critical that we can kind of put those things together with food insecurity and the way we just go through life.
And what we do see with, especially as children get older into teens, is food being associated when in an insecure home, food being very much associated with guilt, to take extra, to feel like someone else should be eating. And when you carry that from your adolescence into your adulthood, maybe now you're not food insecure. Maybe now you're rich and you have plenty of money, but you still have that emotionality, those ties to taking something or different things that you just don't feel you deserve to eat. Everyone in this community and in every community deserves to have food in the kitchen, deserves to know that they're going to eat tonight.
I see children who are food insecure on the very low end of height and weight scales as they go through puberty. And I know that sets them up to have the relationship with their body that they're supposed to be this small into adulthood. And when they get adequate food amounts and nutrition amounts and that body starts to respond, their first inclination is to start restricting in order to remain a certain size. And those are the types of things that I don't want anyone to struggle with. Like, you need to know your body's going to change and it's okay, but let's look at where we can add in nutrition and you can still feel good about the choices that you're making.
How do I, as a pediatrician, first of all, identify which of my families are affected by this? As a privately owned pediatric outpatient group, we don't screen for this. I know hospital-based systems may, or community clinics do, but we have not done a good job of this. And it is something that I want to address in our office and change. One of the number one piece of advice we give to families who have children with picky eaters is present that food even 15 times, because then that's how many times it's been shown by child development experts for a toddler to accept a new food. But that is really speaking from a position of privilege, because if you are struggling to afford food, you're not going to present something that may get thrown out 15 times. You can't do it. So that piece of advice is great from a child development point of view, but not really practical to a large percentage of our population. If you're saying 1 in 5 children are facing food insecurity, and our pediatric population that we serve here, I believe, reflects pretty well the community, that means that 1 in 5 of my patients that I'm seeing are facing that. So I need to do a better job of screening for it. And I also need to be aware of that. So when families have those questions, I can give them advice that's effective for them.
Right. Having those resources, I think, is something that, for one thing, the numbers I gave you were for our community here in Central Texas. 100% of counties in the United States of America have food insecurity. There is no place that this would not apply. So when I talk about those numbers, it's not just that we're particularly blighted, it's that this is an endemic problem. One thing I would definitely call upon doctors to do, like I said, in 100% of our nation's counties, is to make sure that you have in your lobby flyers, whatever it is, that outline the resources in your community. During the summer, there are lunch programs available in the community. And we'll be doing at the food bank probably additional food distributions to address the problem of summer feeding, because a lot of people, their access to food goes way down when the kids are home.
And you're on the hook for all their meals.
You're on the hook for the meals and the snacks, and it affects how much they get and how much you get. And even if you're able to pull it off one more summer, the stress level in the family, I think, is just such a health determinant.
It is. Most of the time. And then also just at talking to a doctor, genetics. Why do we never talk about genetics and how that plays a role in size? Like, no one says anything. Oh, she's tall. Her family's tall. No one says anything. Oh, she's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, because genetics. Size is also genetic. There is size diversity. There are people in smaller and larger bodies on both sides of the have always existed naturally. And I always tell my clients, you and I can eat the exact same foods and move this exact same amount of movement and still have different bodies. And that's okay. Like, that's okay.
Of course, there's also complexity with that, because there's genetics and there's epigenetics.
Right.
And
Correct.
the epigenetics is how those genes are turned on and off. And that is directly affected by things like social determinants of health,
and
access
food
to food. So it's very
and there's
complicated.
also
it is very, very.
And there's also
air
like
pollution.
I don't even want to talk about blonde, but blonde being passed down, you sort of see it. But you can also be passing down your relationships with food, your behaviors surrounding food. So, like, I might be built like my mother because we're both cooking the same way, more than it being genetically determined.
I was just we were talking about food insecurity. One of the studies that I was just reading about was the Dutch hunger winter right at the end of World War II.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And just one generation after they were intentionally starved, that they saw a doubling of high blood pressure in the next generation. And by the generation after that, there was a quadrupling of high blood pressure and a doubling of type 2 onset diabetes. So, like, when we talk about food insecurity, we're not just talking about the people who are going to be affected right now. We're talking about how those trauma markers are right into the DNA and passed on. Like, so it's
several generations down. And that's
down.
Epigenetics.
Yes.
And that's why we don't talk about it, because it's so complicated.
Super complicated. But very interesting. And we can start to see how to get at maybe some of the root causes, like ending hunger and food insecurity.
What we do now to help people also has an impact several generations down.
Well, and may I say, as long as we're putting plugs in for impacts that things might have. Whether you're experiencing food insecurity or not, we invite you to come volunteer at the food bank, because that will affect so many areas of your health and your self-esteem, your kids' self-esteem, and be very eye-opening to what's really going on in the community. The 3 things that we ask people to do is donate. Oh gosh, we want you to donate. We need your money so bad. Donate, volunteer, and advocate. And like I said, I could talk all day about advocacy, but I do urge people to look at Feeding America, because they have great advocacy resources of how to get hold of your congressman, how to enunciate what you're looking for in our farm bill. But we welcome anyone to just go to the Hays County Food Bank website and register to volunteer. We have lots of stuff coming up. And if you just can't volunteer during the week, when we do have the occasional Saturday one, and we will need you at Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like I said, donate, volunteer, and advocate for your neighbors and for yourself.
Perfect.
Well, this podcast hopefully will be an illumination, like share. There's so much good information. And I think that your patients and that dog are very lucky to have you. Like someone who's like looking at it from both sides, because it's so easy with all the things that are written into a medical education just to keep the status quo like this. Oh no, this is,
Or to think you know everything.
Yes, it's so easy. So I just love that you are like, well, what is it? What can I do? So I think that's amazing.
Thank you. We really strive to, it's cliche when people are asked, why did you become a doctor? And you say, oh, to help people. It's
Right.
cliche, but yet it's still true. And looking at how can we do that best and meet our community's needs, meet our patients where they are in terms of their ability, their access, their capacity. Because I can talk to them all day about the importance of eating healthy food. And if they don't have access to it, I'm wasting their time
Right.
and my time.
Yeah.
So I really want to identify how can we really be the most effective at helping our patients have access. Yeah. And like you said, fed is best. And once we have addressed that, then we'll work on.
Then we'll talk about,
what food we're eating.
Well, and one thing that's so
or how much and how often, right?
Right.
Like some of those things.
One thing, though, that's so fundamental to me, it is so fundamental to share food with your neighbors that it is part of the entire river of humanity.
Yeah.
For people, I think as long as there have been any sort of civilization, there's been a way that people wanted to share food. Hasn't always been perfect, isn't perfect now. But that fundamental desire to do it, I think is just really at the base of us as people, as each other's
social
neighbors.
Animals, yes.
This was an amazing conversation. I am so grateful that you shared your time, expertise, and your wisdom. And thank you very much for joining me on Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure.
My pleasure. And thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black. Parenting is a journey that comes with many challenges, but also much joy. I hope this podcast empowers you to set your family on the path to lifelong health. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more helpful information about plant-based nutrition for families and children, check out the show website, www.eatgreenswithdrblack.com. And don't forget to eat your greens.
Well, I'm Lisa.
I'm Leslie.
We're the L Train.
We are woo-woo.
I might have to keep that in.